Opening your eyes. Lesson 6. Looking forward to opening your eyes? This is the 6th and final lesson of the paradigm shift. Over the past 5 weeks, we went through a number of different topics, and I can honestly say for myself that although I've been a student of the Rebbe for my entire life and grew up with these Chabad teachings, going through them together with you and really learning them in depth the way that they're presented here has really resonated deeply with me and has caused a paradigm shift in my own life. It's brought home some of these concepts that I heard about or knew in a very concrete way. And this paradigm shift, it's the last one. It's about Mashiach. The Rebbe said that when Mashiach comes, it's going to be printed in all the Gazetten, in the Post Gazette or whatever, or in, translate to modern day terms, it's going to be shared all over Facebook and broadcast across Twitter. And the Rebbe said we're going to fly in the jet of all jets. And just borrowing that expression, this paradigm shift class is kind of like the paradigm shift of all paradigm shifts. So let's start with learning exercise number 1 with a question about washing our hands. Anybody who's been over to our house Friday night for Shabbos dinner knows that before we have the challah, everybody lines up to wash their hands. 4 3 times over the right, 3 times over the left. We'll have it do 2 times. But that's not just Shabbos before the challah, but really anytime we eat bread, we wash our hands. What is the reason for why we wash our hands? Luckily, we have multiple choice here.
Is it here?
Yeah, multiple choice. 156. 156.
56. The idea we're talking about.
1A, for hygienic reasons. Any raise of hands? Washing our hands?
Yeah.
Oh, it's terrible.
I like B,
I like
because
B.
water is a metaphor for Torah, of which we should always be mindful.
I like that.
Beats the hell out of me.
B.
Well, why would it give you the choice of A and stuff like that?
C, to symbolize the need for pure intentions when partaking of the world's pleasures. Got one hand. D, because we anticipate the messianic redemption at any moment.
They're all wet.
Or E, because of A and C, which means you can't choose any other two, because if it was two or all of the above, then that would be one of the options. So it says A and C, so if it's multiple, then it's not A and B or A and B.
No, I don't believe it's A.
I like B, though.
Not
B's a
that
good
close.
one.
B. We got how many B's? 3 B's?
I like
I'll go with C. How's that?
C.
Okay.
Got 2 C's. You got 2 quiet. So, okay, we're going to come back to this question, but I want to first play a word association game. I'm going to say a word, and you say what comes to your mind.
Oh, I'm not good at this one.
Don't worry, we're just going to do it once. Chabad.
Menorah.
Public menorah.
Big one.
Good big public menorah.
4-story menorah.
Okay. Torah, Hasidic. Unconditional love for every Jew.
Fanaticism. What's that?
Oh.
Fanatics. What are they fanatics about?
Minute. Yeah.
Have an obsession. What's their obsession?
Oh, me or you?
Chabad. Chabad. What do you think of Chabad?
No, I'm being facetious.
That's fine. No bars hold. No hold.
Righteousness. There we have it.
So one of the things that comes to mind when you ask, I don't know, maybe Jewish people in Israel, go around Israel, what do you think of Chabad? Or what do you associate with Chabad? They say, Mashiach. Mashiach activism. It's a big, for better or for worse, there's this koch, or just extreme obsession almost with the concept of Mashiach. The story of two Jews who were traveling in the subway in the 1940s, and the subway station said Kingston Avenue, which is the stop right in front of 770, like literally at the front door. And one of the guys says to his friend, you know, that's where the Lubavitchers live. And this was before the Rebbe became Rebbe, and the Frierdiker Rebbe had just recently emigrated and came to America. And he said, who are the Lubavitchers? You haven't heard about the Lubavitchers? Those are the strange Jews that really believe in the coming of Mashiach. It can happen at any moment. So from, even before the Rebbe became Rebbe, it was something that was associated with the Chabad movement. Some people will even, let's say, tolerate Chabad's, Mashiach enthusiasm because they love so much about what Chabad does, but find it, almost like, whoa, that's a bit over the top. And the Rebbe, in his own words, in text 1, says that from the time that I was a child attending Cheder, and even earlier than that, the picture of the future redemption began to take form in my mind. The redemption of the Jewish people from their final exile, a redemption that will finally allow us to understand the purpose of suffering, harsh decrees, and annihilations of exile. When does somebody go to Cheder? They're like,
3, 4, 5.
yeah, somewhere around that age. And I was like, this is something that I've been thinking about and picturing in my mind from the youngest of age. I don't know what I was thinking about at that age, but I don't think it was.
I like blue whales.
Yeah,
It's really nice for blue whales.
race cars.
Blue whales. I really like blue whales.
And then fast forward about 45 years to the very first Farbrengen that the Rebbe gave on Yud Shvat in Tafshin Yud Aleph, 1951, when the Rebbe officially accepted upon himself the leadership of the Chabad movement. His mission statement was this, text 2. We are now at the conclusion of the final period of exile. The task that is now demanded of each and every one of us is to complete the process of drawing down the Iker Shechina, the essence of the divine presence, the Tachtonim, into the lowest realm. If you ask somebody, what are your 5-year goals? I don't want to say what I'm planning on doing tomorrow because I don't want to sell myself short and then come up with some sort of over-ambitious goal that I'm not going to be able to keep up with. The Rebbe's goal of the Nesius, of accepting the leadership, he said, you know what we're going to do with this? We're going to bring Mashiach. That's my goal. That was just a huge ambition. A picture is worth 1,000 words and a video is maybe 10,000 words. So here's a short clip of the Rebbe encouraging the singing of We Want Mashiach Now and the yearning for Mashiach, the deep anticipation for Mashiach's arrival.
You want Mashiach now? Der Ragachover Teinit, der Ingen, von Binyan Beis Hamikdash, von Churban Beis Hamikdash, Churban Beis Hamikdash, das Adover Nimshach. Es ist nicht der Pshat, dass der Beis Hamikdash Chorb geworden mit Karge 2000 Jahre zurück. Und von demut hat man an Mavelis Yeshore. Bei der Fahrer, sie kommt Tischebov und die 3 Wochen bei Kajitze, bei der Bechol Jem, sagt man, dass Zene in Einu, Mispal alle Gyule Vechule, auf eine Sache, was hat getroffen, mit Hecher 1900 Jahren zurück, sagt nein, aber der Chid, der Churn bis Hamikdash, ist das Bechol Jem, wo Jem, bemeldet davon verstandig, was es darf sein, der Geschrei, ad Mose Bechol Jem, wo Jem. Und sagt dass sogar Befehl ist in Jerusalem. Das steht in Jerusalem, ja, kol mi, שלניבנה ביס המקדש בזמן, ist כאילו חורף ביס המקדש בזמן. Durchgegangen 1900 Jahre, mit noch Jahren Nachriese. wie bald aber jem Chamishi Pasche Pinchas, und schon lachert vieles Meire. Wir lehnen even auf Beis Hamikdash, darf ihm wissen sein, dass es darf sein der Geschrei, auf der Geilu, Kiilu Chorov bejem Chamishi Pasche Pinchas. Und wie bald er sie noch am Nächten geschrien hat Mose, und näher Nächten geschrien hat Mose, und Kola Yom Shelifni sei geschrien hat Mose. Danach Rachmon al-Islam, Chorov Beis Hamikdash, heint in der Früh oder heint bei Tag, ist er von verstandig, was es darf sein, der Geschrei, ad Mose Yitzre. Bekommen es nicht ein von der Pschettel, dass ein Loch in Teire, als in Teire steht, in Mischele, niemand bis am Migdash beyonder, ist Kiili kach wie kach. Stellt mir sich vor, Bischaas, was Nisra Beis Hamikdash, und dabei steht da Jid, was ist ein harter Ried, ein steiner Ried mit der Lego Hevel. Und seht, was ist der Chore bis am Migdash beyonder, wollte er sich gekehrt der Welt. Sagt Teiras Hemes und Teiras Chaim, Yeroba Chaim, Kehra Welt Heim.
Wow, so that's
Kept about the
character of Welt Heim, to turn over the world today. This is a teaching that comes from the Rogachover, who was actually one who gave the Rebbe smicha, where he redefines the very concept of time, actually in very romantic terms when it comes to marriage. And some people think of marriage as like a one-time thing that happened, and then you remain married, and maybe you remember it every year on the anniversary. But according to the Rogachover and very interesting Talmudic discussion, marriage is an ongoing thing. It's a pa'ula namshechus, as it's called. And so similarly, the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash is an ongoing thing. As long as the temple was not here, then the exile state that we're in is not something that began 2,000 years ago and it's just extending through, but it's a situation that we are in right this moment. Imagine you were standing before the Beis Hamikdash and you saw its destruction. Even if you had a heart of stone, you would be motivated to turn over the world. And so the Rebbe had an extreme passion for the coming of Mashiach and anticipating that redemption, and spoke about it all the time. And as I mentioned, even those who really appreciated the Rebbe and very friendly with Chabad, they sometimes were rubbed the wrong way. The questions for discussion: in your estimation, why are some people bothered by the Rebbe's and Chabad's strong emphasis on Mashiach and the redemption? Well, maybe it's some people like the status quo, or
No, it's just, I think it's
like been false messiah.
right, there's been a few incidents of that too. And I think also living in a non-Jewish government over the centuries, like Christianity, over through its various phases.
Yeah.
It's kind of like left a lot of Jewish people very bitter,
Yeah.
especially
Some people think
because
it's not even a Jewish
if
concept.
they don't have people who have a proper education, they
Yeah.
think of it as a non-Jewish. They don't understand. So when they even people who grew up going to certain movements, going to certain schools, don't even have proper education of what they don't know. They don't know the concepts of what this is, and they don't. And so that's one. But within the Orthodox world, I think it's just maybe they're just. I think maybe like you said, the status quo thing. Like they're feeling they have to be pushed to do more than how to do it. Like they have yeshivot, they keep Shabbat, they keep Shabbat, they keep mitzvot, but they're being pushed to do more than just to really actively anticipate redemption. More, like it's not just word, like it's not just the Shemona Esrei, it's not just Shabbat, it's more than that.
I think when we identify the core of what Mashiach is, which is the paradigm shift for today, then a lot of the inhibitions or uncomfortableness that people have with the idea of change and Geula, when you come across them or whatever, they say, oh, Chabad has a messianicism problem or something along those lines, they'll be equipped with the grounded response to understand. First of all, the first step that we're going to take is how it's not really a Chabad novelty, but a Jewish thing. But that doesn't take away from people's general comfort with it. So it's a Jewish thing to constantly anticipate the coming of redemption. But But even so, okay, so then people are uncomfortable with that. When we uncovered the inner dimension of what the coming of Mashiach is all about, it'll answer whatever it is that you have discomfort. So we can't really go through all the Jewish literature about Mashiach because it's well beyond the scope of this class. Maybe we can start a Mashiach share afterwards and we go through it in a different context. But just to bring out how ingrained the belief in Mashiach and the anticipation of Mashiach's arrival really is, let's look at the day of the Jew. What are some of the common things that we do on a daily basis? We start with eating. We eat. The correct, though possibly not commonly known answer for the question that we started off this lesson with is why do we wash our hands? That we wash our hands before eating bread because we anticipate the coming of Mashiach. At any moment, Mashiach can come, and in the times that the Beis Hamikdash stood in Jerusalem, there were certain sacred grains that you could only eat with purified hands. And we wash our hands in order to, it's a ritual purity thing, in order to eat bread with ritually pure hands, because at any moment Mashiach can come, and we're going to have to go back to the Beis Hamikdash, and we have to be used to the concepts of ritual purity and impurity, which in exile doesn't really have a practical significance. But think about it. For 2,000 years of exile, how many times have Jews gone up and washed their hands before they eat bread? Each time it's anticipating the coming of Mashiach. Mashiach will come any moment, and we have to be used to ritual purity. And then what do we do as soon as we finish eating? We bench. What do we say in benching? In the third pair, we thank Hashem for the food and for the sustenance. And the third paragraph of benching is all about the anticipating the redemption. It's devoted to praying for the Geula. Now, what about our prayers? What is the heart of the prayer? We pray 3 times a day, and the climax of the prayer is called the What's Modim in? It's Modim is in the Shemona Esrei. I want to hear a little piece of.
I'm sorry, I was thinking the apex of the Shemona Esrei.
What is the apex of all the prayers?
Shemona Esrei.
It's Shemona Esrei. What does Shemona Esrei mean? 18. You want to hear a little bit of Jewish accounting?
Yeah, here we go.
How many blessings are there in the Shemona Esrei? Shemona Esrei means the 18. The Shemona Esrei, the climax of the prayer is called the Shemona Esrei, the 18 blessings. 19. There's your piece of Jewish accounting. You go to a Jewish accountant and you say, you know, what's my balance? He asks you, what do you want it to be? I'll work it out.
You're not following me.
Don't worry, it was just a joke.
Say it again. I want to hear what this means.
So Shemona Esrei is the central prayer in the 3 prayers that we do every day. Once in the morning, once in the afternoon, once in the evening. It means 18 because there were originally 18 blessings. But then there was an additional blessing that was added to it, so now there are 19 blessings.
No,
but we still call it the 18.
Do you repeat it 18 times 3 times? Or is it
We do
six?
We do all of the 18 different blessings 3 times a day. The same 18 blessings. Now, how many of those 18 blessings are fully devoted to asking for the redemption? The first 3 are praising Hashem, the last 3 are thanking Hashem, the middle are about asking Hashem for our needs, and 5 out of those are fully devoted to asking for redemption. And there are books that find every single stanza that's really referring to Mashiach, and you're basically asking for Mashiach hundreds of times throughout the Shemona Esrei. But 5 of the prayers are unequivocally just fully devoted to Mashiach without bending or twisting or explaining or whatever. That's clearly what those blessings are about. And so the belief in Mashiach is a central concept within Judaism, and not just the belief in his eventual arrival, but as Maimonides writes here in text 3 on page 158, we don't just believe in his coming, but we anticipate his arrival. The Mashiach will appear one day and renew the Davidic dynasty and restore its sovereignty. He will build the temple and gather the dispersed of Israel. At that time, we will observe all the mitzvahs related to the temple and the Holy Land as we did in the days of yore. One who does not believe in this redemption, or does not await, means like actively anticipate its coming, denies not only the statements of the prophets, who spoke clearly about the coming of Mashiach and the prophecies within, but also in the words of the Torah and in Moshe's servant. This is a very fundamental theme within Judaism, to believe in Mashiach and to anticipate his arrival. So it turns out that the Rebbe's emphasis on the coming of Mashiach is simply a reflection of the Jewish perspective on the matter. But it has supreme importance in Jewish thought. But that doesn't really answer why some people are uncomfortable with it. It just deflects it from being, you're uncomfortable with Chabad, and you're uncomfortable with something in Judaism. But when we get into the nature of redemption, then we'll realize that there's really nothing. The truth is, over the past 5 weeks throughout this course, we've actually been talking about Mashiach, even if we have not really used those words of redemption and Mashiach in an external way. Can you think of how this course is really about Mashiach?
Well, I mean, we engaged the idea of the master plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that there's got to be a point to all of this. That's redemption.
So the essence of this course is to see the essence of everything. Get to the core. I mean, sometimes we get caught up in the superficialities and the external, but when you see it for what it truly is, its truest definition, you see that although the world might look like a jungle, really it's a beautiful garden, which we talked about in lesson 1. And it's a perfect reflection of the divine master plan, the Torah blueprint, lesson 3, and that although we might have our flaws, we're a pristine soul when we get down to the core of it, and even the flaws themselves have certain value. So what is redemption? It's nothing but the day when we will finally be able to see visibly with our own naked eye all of that. Be able to see that truth. When the facades will be ripped away and the truest form of everything will be on plain display. We won't have to peer beneath the surface to try to figure out what it's all about, but it will be a clear reflection of what it truly is. And so I found the past lessons very rejuvenating, to be able to see the world in that way, to be able to see a fellow in such a light. And redemption is merely an actualization of that reality.
And the purpose, well, one of the purposes of Shabbos is it's like a piece of that.
Yeah, we get a taste of what that reality is going to be.
It's peacefulness, you don't negative.
Get in touch with the core of what this world is about. A little above.
Kind of tune off, the rest of
What's interesting is that the Hebrew words for galus and geula are etymologically related. Gola means exile. Galus is actually a term that we use, but we misuse it. Galus really, galut. Galut is a descriptor of a certain type of exile, like galut Edom or galut Babel. It's describing the type of galus that it is. But gola is the actual word for exile.
maybe all the way,
Like you think of the Megillah. The Megillah is a scroll, and Megillas is the scroll of Megillas Esther, Megillas Eicha. Galus or Galut is a descriptor of a certain type of Galus. But Gola is actually a root word. That's what the word is Gola. Now, how do you say redemption? Just stick an aleph in there. Geula. Geula. One aleph. Look, Gola, exile. Geula. Redemption.
other than the Google,
Primary.
So if you went to Mushki's Hebrew reading course, you would know the letters in the Hebrew alphabet are not just arbitrary, but they represent certain divine energies. And so the words that we refer to things in Lashon HaKodesh in the biblical language are reflective of what they really are. So the fact that they're closely related is not just happenstance. Of course, nothing is happenstance, but specifically when you come to words in Lashon HaKodesh. So how is it that two things that are so different, exile, redemption, are so closely related? They're almost the same word.
You have to go through the exile to get to redemption.
But it seems like they're two different things.
You
You have to go from one to get to the other. But if it's a completely different state of being, then you're going from aleph to taf. You're going from like one thing to the other thing. Here's an interesting explanation on page 160, text 4. Redemption does not imply a departure from our current state, from our lives, routines, the world. To the contrary, the definition of redemption is that the very entity that was previously in a state of exile, not nullified, but redeemed, that same entity. It's there, but instead of being captive, it's redeemed. All the positive elements that are part of our current reality will remain intact. Only their exile-like condition will be eliminated. The concealment of each entity's true nature will be removed. And so we go. This explains why the word geula, redemption, includes within itself the word gola, exile, with the added letter aleph. Redemption will not do away with exile and our efforts therein. To the contrary, redemption's characteristics is that it lifts up and redeems the entire state of exile and transforms exile itself into redemption. This is done by removing all of exile's concealments, everything that obscures each thing's true nature and purpose, and revealing within everything the aleph. What is the aleph? The alufay shalaylam, the master of the world. When we reveal Hashem, the aleph, one is Hashem. There's no oneness like Hashem. When we reveal the aleph, Hashem, in this world, that is the purpose for which Hashem created it, then exile itself transforms into redemption, geula. So we're not going from one place and coming to another place, but revealing within the existence that we are, its revealed state. It's the aleph is like turning on the light switch. You're here, it's there already. We are in a state where we don't see it. You put in the aleph, and boom. Exile is the state of redemption, but held captive. Adding the aleph is revealing what it really is. So some people think of Mashiach as some sort of prize that Hashem will give us for sticking it out for 2,000 years or for being good. The idea of Mashiach and redemption is taking reality and unveiling it, seeing it for what it really is.
Does the word aloof mean master?
Yeah, it's in modern Hebrew they use it for general.
I was going to say, yeah. It's,
Aloof.
right. It's a
When the Rebbe spoke to children, he would call Hashem, not God, but the commander in chief. You know, so they would get the idea that you're soldiers in Hashem's army. Hashem is the commander in chief. And, yeah, the Aluf Hashem. They would say it in English with the Yiddish accent. Commander in chief. When we start benching on Shabbos, the grace after meal, we sing. You ever stop for a moment yeah, I don't know, just to say this before benching. It's a song of ascents, Psalm 126. What does it say? When Mashiach comes, we will realize what? Hayinu kicholmin. We'll look back at our exiled existence and say, we were dreamers. It doesn't say that Mashiach's coming is a dream come true. It says the opposite. When Mashiach comes, we'll look back and say we were dreaming. We were like dreamers then. You know, a dream, you can have so many different crazy things happening at once, and it could be very real. But imagine you were having a nightmare, a dream, and then you've got some sort of consciousness to know that this is not real. You lost something major or something tragic happened, but it's just a dream. Wouldn't you want to wake up from it and come back to the true reality? It's like when Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream." You know, everybody understands what he meant. It's that we want a world where there isn't racism, where people are not discriminated against based on the color of their skin. But is that a dream, or is that the reality? That's the way the world is naturally. That's the way the world should be. And we're living in some sort of nightmare or dreamlike state, the fact that people could just dismiss someone based on the color of their skin. Is that the dream state? That's not reality. That's not what the world really is. Not the way Hashem created it. Here, the Rebbe in his own words, this is like an unedited transcript of the Rebbe's Farbrengen, where he talks about this concept of being awake. There are those who are incredulous, though for obvious reasons they're going to articulate it, over the fact that there is a certain Jew, talking about himself, with a large audience, who at every occasion and public gathering speaks about one topic without pause or let up, the coming of Mashiach. Moreover, at these gatherings, he requests the assembly sing while emphasizing the intent that we're going to build it speedily, and Mashiach's going to come not tomorrow, but today. Certainly, every Jew believes in the redemption that could happen any instant. Nonetheless, they wonder, is it really necessary to speak ceaselessly about the matter and to constantly emphasize that Mashiach can come at this very moment? It is difficult to relate towards the redemption as a practical reality. If we only mention the redemption occasionally, no, what can anybody say? It is, after all, one of the 13 principles of faith. But the unceasing talk and passion at every single Farbrengen is seemingly excessive. It seems as if he wants to force the issue upon the listeners. In the minds of these people, redemption is what? I have a dream. It's something far out, something distant that you're dreaming about. A good and beautiful dream, but it's not reality. That being so, they argue, why don't you speak about the dream stuff? However, in actuality, the opposite is true. The dream is not to talk about the redemption, quite the contrary. Exile is a dream. Exile is the most unnatural, dreamlike state. The redemption is our awake state, our true reality. People fear change, especially radical change, and maybe that's why a lot of people are very uncomfortable with the notion of redemption. But it's because a lot of people's idea of redemption is not based on authentic Jewish tradition. Mashiach coming can be characterized as the unapocalypse. Mashiach is basically expressing the real, beautiful self that the world is. A very climactic, but un-Armageddon type of thing. The one thing that will change is that everything will reflect its potential and its true self. Is that something to try? So, we've seen throughout this course how the Rebbe's passion for uncovering the inner dimension of things getting to the core, to the essence of each thing is what he was all about. So then perhaps his obsession for Mashiach is not that's fairly understood why he would be so excited about Mashiach and into it. It's all about revealing what this world is really about. Exile is the most unnatural, dreamlike state. With redemption, we will awaken to a true, beautiful reality. So, when we want something really badly, we have to do something about it. There are many times where the Rebbe quoted the statement that Hamaisa Hua Iker, action is the main thing. We look at this Rambam in fact 6, page 164. A person should always view oneself as equally balanced with merits and faults, and view the world too as equally balanced with merits and faults. Therefore, if one performs but one mitzvah, he tips the balance, his own and the entire world's scale, and affects personal and global deliverance and salvation. So we basically view ourselves as the one mitzvah that we're about to do is going to be the mitzvah that breaks the camel's back, but in a positive sense. It's going to be the one that tips our personal scale and the whole world scale for good. And there are certain mitzvahs that have a special connection to Mashiach. One of them is tzedakah. Every time that a person came by the Rebbe would give them $1. Well, not every time, but there were darla lines where people would come to meet with the Rebbe for a minute, and he wanted to make sure that this meeting should have a practical effect. So we'd give out dollars for the people to distribute to whatever tzedakah they wanted to. This is like the opposite of fundraising because he was giving out money. But it was promoting tzedakah, which is the Chabad approach to fundraising, is to enable somebody to be able to do that mitzvah. Here, it's a short clip of the Rebbe giving out dollars and coins.
Dr. Samuel Rappaport from Cornell. Your blessings have helped my patients very much in the past, and I hope that his 120 can be able to continue to do this for the rest of his life.
It's a very good idea to make an innovation that every doctor has a doctor push.
Okay.
This is also a good remedy for all the patients. Okay. And for the doctor himself also. God much bless.
Thank you.
Heute Nacht machen sie die Mädel hat Play, sie will besser Bracha doen.
Slocha Rado, verwechseln ein Player, das was Docke Pushkin, daran liegen das jene Docke Pushkin, das Slocha Rado.
Excuse me.
Hat das Docke Pushkin daheim?
Ja.
Und was daran liegen Docke Pushkin daheim. Aber es macht halt. Die sagen, ich bekomme bei der Verkott. וזה יגדים ביר המשיח, פרקוסם בגמורה, מזרזת את המשיח, לבוא ברגל. Suicide. That is what you have a charity box. So be a good thing to have a charity box in every institution. Yes. Yeah. And if I can start it, I'll be happy to start by my dollar. Wat a bank, wat a wechsel naar de dokter pushen.
In the bank.
In de bank, omdat Masbe zijn die clients, als als me geht auf de dokter, hat mir eine Sache reinzulegen in de bank.
Dat slagen.
Dat slagen. Dat is heranleggen in de dokter pushen, heranleggen meine $1 regel.
Could I do something more to bring the Mashiach more quickly? Well, could I do something more?
To increase your donation to the doctor, but mainly to but to influence all your friends, they'll give at least 10%. And if possible 20, I'll be very happy. That's at least 10%.
תודה רבה. Thank you very much. My sister. תודה רבה.
Now, that charity goes to where exactly?
So supporting.
Where? Does it go just to Chabad, or it goes what kind of charity?
Oh, the Rebbe wasn't telling them which charity to give it to. You give it to whatever charity they decided. To whichever charity the individual decided. Each individual did it to, God appointed us as the manager over all of our funds. He tells us, okay, I want you to use most of these funds to take care of yourself, but to determine where it can be best used for the money that you're going to give to charity. But the truth is, why is charity so connected to Mashiach? It's because money is the most sought after thing. People work all day for it and are fighting for it the entire time, which is what gives money its value, is that it's sought after. And when you take some of your own hard-earned money and you give it to tzedakah, you give it to charity to help the poor people or to promote Jewish causes and ideas, then you're affirming what your entire endeavor is about. The whole effort that you're putting in is for a higher cause. And so tzedakah has this unique position of revealing the aleph, the spiritual purpose, not only of the money that we give, but of all the money that we're earning. Does that answer your question?
That's a good answer.
And then Avos Yisrael, having unlimited love, also reveals the aleph, the spiritual purpose, because we're not focusing on each other's flaws. We're focusing on the inner dimension and connection. And it's also why the Rebbe promoted the 7 Noahide laws and teaching the entire world, although we don't seek converts, but we do teach the laws that God gave us for all of humanity, known as the 7 Noahide laws, which brings out the morals and decencies within the world at large, revealing that out. So we've come to see that the imaginary Mashiach that people have problems with, the one that's going to take us all the way to Disneyland as some sort of reward for all your hard efforts, or the Mashiach that's going to bring about destruction and Armageddon, that Mashiach has never come. The real Mashiach, the one that will usher in the redemption, as we described, and reveal the aleph, the spiritual dimension of what this world is all about, is something that we eagerly await and anticipate with open arms. I mean, who doesn't want to have unconditional love for every single person? And who doesn't want a world that is peaceful and in sync with its deepest, beautiful core? Do you want to see the world for what it truly is? That's the idea of redemption. Getting in touch with the reality of the world, waking up from the dream. So it's no surprise that throughout all generations of Jewish history, it's been a strong focal point and a big emphasis. But we're not done here. There's a step further that the Rebbe took it, as we'll see here in this little video about the uniqueness of the time that we're in right now.
Is there any words for your followers there this week?
God will much bless you and for success in your writings. And to my followers, you transmit a message that Mashiach, Messiah is coming very soon.
Very soon?
Yeah, then they must be prepared to accept him properly.
Thank you.
Yeah, you included, and me included.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rabbi, can you tell us the message you have for the world about Mashiach, the message you have for the whole world about the Mashiach?
It was printed in all the press of all the countries. The Mashiach is ready to come now. It is only from our part to do something additional in the realm of goodness and kindness.
So people should be doing goodness and kindness for him to come.
At least a little more than Mashiach will come immediately. That's what gives to charity, the double portion of charity.
Thank you, Rabbi. You're very kind.
Thank you.
Double portion of kindness.
All right, thank you.
Double portion. Double portion.
What is it about the time we live in now that you could say, oh, now Mashiach is coming. It's now. The Rebbe really focused on this in 1991, which is right. And what is the process of bringing Mashiach in order to be able to understand why is it now that the Rebbe is saying this is a generation that it's going to happen in. This is it. This is that the time is now for real, not just this is an opportune time for Mashiach to come. And there are many stages throughout history that saw kabbalistically or in mystical realms that in such and such a year Mashiach will come, and didn't come in those times. But there was something unique about the Rebbe's approach to to Mashiach's imminent arrival. The process began when we received the Torah at Mount Sinai. There's a parable given by the king who decreed the Romans can't go to Syria and the Syrians can't go down to Rome. And when Hashem created the world, he decreed the heavens are the domain of God and the earth has been given to the children of human, Adam. But when God sought to give the Torah, he nullified that original decree and said, those below may ascend above and those above may descend below. So until the Torah was given from the beginning of creation, it was not very easy to reveal that inner dimension of what the reality is. It was an unbridgeable gap between the external veneer of this world and its intrinsic dimension of being in perfect harmony with Hashem. But when the Torah was given, the ability to change that was brought about. How so? We'll take any mitzvah. When we take physical items, let's say you take the foliage of the branches and you use them for the schach on your sukkah, or you take an animal's hide and you make a mezuzah out of it, or you use your physical arm and you distribute charity, or take flour and you make matzah out of it. You're taking material things of this world and you're revealing what they are all about. And so, for thousands of years, you have millions of people doing billions of different mitzvahs, and that has a cumulative effect. In every generation, you're taking more and more of this reality, and then the resistance that this world has to that inner dimension, to what this world is all about, starts to fade away. And we start to realize that goal of revealing the Aleph within this world. What is the final frontier of that refinement process? The last stage that we have. We spoke one of the lessons about avodah b'koach atzmi, of owning it and understanding it yourself. And so we've been doing a lot of mitzvahs and refining every element of this world to the point where it's ready to it's ready for Mashiach. The last step, text 8, because Yisrael, the Jewish people in the future, will taste from the tree of life, which is this very book of splendor, aka the Zohar. They will be redeemed with compassion from exile. The printing and dissemination of the Zohar, which is the primary Jewish mystical text, began a new era. It's a time when the inner dimension of this world, its divine dimension, is now available for the human mind to comprehend and grasp, for us to get what it's all about. With this in mind, let's now read the statement from the Rebbe, text 9. By now, we have reached the point where the physical body and even the materiality of the world is completely purified and refined and is ready to assimilate all sorts of spiritual matters, including and especially the light of Mashiach, the light of the true and complete redemption. The only thing that remains for us to do is to properly open our eyes, and we'll see how all is ready for the redemption. So the Rebbe doesn't say I had some sort of mystical vision that Mashiach is going to come in this generation. There were generations previously where sages were kind of like redemption meteorologists, where they saw, the clouds brewing, the redemption, and predicted, let's say, certain years, like 5408, which was corresponds to 1647, and say this is going to be the time of redemption. But they basically saw something brewing in the heavens, and they said, let's, let's take advantage of this and bring it down and channel it over. It's kind of like a news forecaster saying, hey, this, you're going through a drought and it's dry over here, but I see it's going to rain over there. So if you build the right pipelines and channels or whatever, you could bring the water from your neighbors into your area. So they looked up in heaven and they said, this is an opportune time for the coming of Mashiach, but they didn't see it within the fabric of reality. But Rebbe said, as long as we open our eyes, we can see that happening, not in the heavens, not in the spiritual realms, but that this world is ready for the Mashiach's coming. Is that something that we can actually see with our own eyes? How would you answer this question? True, false, or it's complicated? 167. The world is a kinder, gentler place than it was a few decades ago, more reflective of its beautiful essence and more consistent with its blueprint of our values. Is that true, false, or complicated? Why?
Sometimes the bad stuff.
Yeah.
There's sometimes the weird stuff.
So the Rebbe didn't leave us guessing. He showed us where and how to look, and argued that if you look with objective eyes, it's impossible not to see a new reality. The new reality is the beautiful essence of the garden-like state of this world. First, he points out in this longer text about the geopolitical scene, which you might have to really go through all the historical data to see what he's talking about. But just in short, there are those who are surprised at the recent statements asserting that we're standing at the end of exile and the threshold of redemption. They say, where do we see this? After all, the world continues to run normal year after year. In truth, however, what is surprising is that these people do not contemplate current, well-publicized events. Let's just take a trip down history and see what is going on before our eyes. In the recent past, extreme and radical transformations have been transpiring around the world. Thanks to Hashem's kindness, these upheavals are happening quietly, that is to say, without wars and bloodshed, but through the paths of diplomacy. These changes are so quiet and peaceful that daily life and regular routines, commerce and the like, continue unaffected despite the extreme transformations taking place in the entire country. It starts with Russia, the country with my father-in-law, the Rebbe, emigrated along with his students and the Shluchim For 70 years, a powerful and fearsome regime cast its terror over the inhabitants of the country to the point that the slightest expression of criticism of the regime was punishable by to exile in Siberia or similar places. Suddenly now, in the shortest period of time, a polar change took place in the country's government, led by the country's political leaders, and this change spread to other countries of the Soviet bloc. In China, similarly, the last period has seen an inner transformation in the governance of the country and also in the nature of its relation to other countries of the world. Also in India, in a relatively short span of time, a government that had held sway for a long time was rejected in favor of a new one. There were similar extreme changeovers in several other countries around the world. These are countries with enormous populations, governments, and regimes that rule billions of people all over the world, the majority of the world's population. It is an unfathomable wonder that people are not paying attention to all of this. Even the beneficiaries of the miracle do not recognize their own miracle.
I was there. 90s were awesome.
Ain't about
Best time ever.
that.
Best time. The 90s, I'm sorry for those you weren't, the 90s were great. The best.
The miracle in all this is that these extreme transformations, which directly influence the majority of the world's population, are taking place quietly in tranquility, something that has no parallel or precedent whatsoever in human history. Historically, regime changes have always been accompanied by bloody wars carried over a long period of time, which dried up the course of life and brought ruin and destruction. There is no need to search too far into history of previous generations, for we saw in our generation the awful ruin of World War II. But now, even greater transformations are occurring in most of the world. And thanks to Hashem's kindness, they are without wars or bloodshed, but are quiet and tranquil. So on the one hand, we have oppressive and cruel regimes that abuse human rights are falling left, right, and center. And point number two is that they're doing so without a bloody war. They're transforming from within. There's a famous verse in Isaiah, says, I think this is engraved on the UN. Nations will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against another nation, and no more will they study warfare. This is a prophecy about Mashiach. We don't have to destroy the swords or discard the spears. Instead, you can use sharp blades for what they were originally used for, agricultural purposes. Similarly, nuclear energy was created by Hashem in order to sustain and reduce workloads for millions of people if you harness the energy properly and you dispose of it properly. But if it's used as a bomb, that's not what its intended use is for. That's a nightmare. That's a corruption, a false reality of what nuclear is meant for. That's the dream. That's the non-reality state called exile.
Is it fair to say then, what's the purpose of war?
Yeah, we don't
It's not
need
really
one.
doing anything, it's just bringing more hate.
But you know what's so cool is that since the dawn of time, war and conquest and oppressive tyrannical regimes and torture and human rights abuses and intolerance, religious persecutions, and all those horrible things, they were the norm. And now, if some little country wants to do that thing, the whole world is up in arms and saying, "Oh, we don't do that anymore." When Russia wanted to annex a little part of a neighboring country, where half the citizens even were for that annex, the whole world's up in arms, like, "No, we don't." Well, who asked Alexander the Great or Napoleon if conquering and going on a conquest, what are you doing this for? And what's wrong with you? And in today's world, if they lived today and they wanted to conquer more land and expand their empire, they would be taken before a world court and locked up for the rest of their lives.
Russia still did it though. And
But it's not acceptable
Syria,
anymore to the world at large.
Nobody moved.
Doing these types of things is becoming more and more taboo. It used to be normal. Like nobody even batted an eye. Like, well, you go and you conquer. That's the way you increase your land. I mean, if you want if you want to increase your land, you go out to war. If you win the war, then that land is rightfully yours. Nobody bats an eye at that type of thing because that's like the norm. But that's not normal. That's a nightmare. That's not the reality of this world. That's crazy. And the world is coming around to realize that oh, this is disgusting. This is not what this world is about. Text 11b. The human mind understands the benefit of beating swords into plowshares. That's something you just have to believe, right? In fact, human logic mandates such behavior because it understands that the world must be conducted justly and uprightly, and absolutely rejects the notion of war, which brings ruin and destruction. Rahman al-Islam. Logic also dictates the need to destroy weapons of war, like swords, and transform them into instruments that bring benefit to civilization. Despite this, throughout the generations, many wars have been waged amongst the nations, wars that brought about ruin and destruction in defiance with plain logic. We must conclude then that the true reason why the recent period has seen a multinational aspiration to end the era of war. Is that happening? Right. We don't see multinational aspiration to end the era of war in the world, and to begin a new era in which the world is preserved through justice and uprightness, with peace and unity. We see the world heading in that direction.
So, yeah, well, you just noticed that they're going to increase the military in front an incredibly greater amount and cutting off all social.
But still, if the United States chooses to use their military force to conquer another country, or to it's looked down upon, not just by other countries, but United States citizens themselves are disgusted by it.
They're still doing it, and lots of people vote for it.
There's a lot of peace groups within what people would consider enemies, but there are people in Israel, Muslims, Christians, and Jews getting together peaceful. I mean, there's more groups. They're not talked about, but they do exist, and there's a lot of them. Don't hear them, but there are.
I think you don't realize the extent of how illogical people were about conquest and battle not even such a long time ago. And in today's world, it's almost universally agreed that human rights violations and warfare and killing is reprehensible.
Right. It was decided by generals. There was non-mass communication. You wanted to concentrate, you sent your military there. Your military commanders had to make decisions right there. There was none of this talk about genocide or human rights. And then there was like, who had time for that? People were working in pre-industrial places. They don't have time to read the New York Times or CNN. There's no movement, there's no protest. There's certainly no UN, no hate. No world order. It's a completely different reality. Right? Understand that completely. We definitely have moved in a major paradigm. We look at World War II, the millions and millions and millions of people that died in that. We
don't want to see those types of things anymore.
It's a real profile for each. It's like unbelievable. The code cap, it's like just totally insane. It pales in comparison to even the horrors and the terrible things we have now. You can't even compare it in the scope or intensity.
So they're ever challenging us to open our eyes and appreciate the new reality that's unfolding before us. See the world changing, attitude shifting. And that affects other areas as well, particularly in these last generations. We see that Hashem has blessed us and that we attain our livelihood with less exertion, with tranquility of soul and body, more so than in previous generations. The world itself facilitates this newfound tranquility. It's no longer the norm to have to work long, back-breaking hours in the field. That, that's not trying to delegitimize the amount of hard work that people put in to earn a livelihood and the challenges that are there, but they pale in comparison to what it was just a century ago. I mean, you used to work 7 days a week. When people first came to America, there was no such thing as taking off for Shabbos. You work 7 days a week, and you work long hours, 12-hour days plus. Now we have 5-hour work weeks, less hours, and what the average person has in today's day and age would have, the type of lifestyle that they're living is unimaginable to even the wealthiest a century ago. And then even the poorest, we have safety nets for food, clothing, and shelter. It used to be common that people would die of starvation or the poor would be malnourished. And we're coming to a point where the world at large is in line with the divine truth. Just skip ahead for a second to text 15. It's a quote from Bill Gates. That way, it's not just religious point of view, but kind of like a no. I don't think so. Bill Gates, the world's richest man, said that by 2035, no nation will be as poor as any of the 35 that the World Bank now classifies as low income, even adjusting for inflation. The facts are on the side of the optimists, Gates, 58, said today in a Bloomberg television interview with Betty Lou. It's actually dangerous that people are focusing on the bad news and not seeing the progress we've made. It means they don't look at the best practices, and it makes them less generous. Almost all countries will be what are now called lower middle income or richer by 2035, Gates said in a letter. They will learn from their most productive neighbors and benefit from innovations such as new vaccines, better seeds, and digital revolution. The belief that the world is getting worse, that we can't solve extreme poverty and disease, is just mistaken. It's harmful. By almost any measure, the world is better than it has ever been. In 2 decades, it'll be better still. Headlines, in a way, are what misleads you. There was just a shooting yesterday in Florida. The world's getting worse, and horrible things are happening. Because bad news is a headline, and a gradual improvement is not a headline. So the resistance is gone. The world is already reflecting its essential beauty. It's aligned with the divine values. The last step is for us to recognize it, to change our consciousness to the fact that we open our eyes and see that reality in front of us. There's a saying that it's easier to take the Jew out of exile than it is to take the exile out of the Jew. That's why they're trying to change our perspective, right? So this text might help, text 13. Despite the buzz and excitement over the redemption during the recent period, it is apparently difficult to instill within ourselves the recognition and feeling that we are really standing on the threshold of redemption. It is difficult to bring ourselves to the point where we live with Mashiach and Geulah redemption. My advice, therefore, I want to do something about it, right? Change your perspective. Here's practical advice. To study in the Torah the topics of Mashiach and redemption. For it is within the power of Torah, God's wisdom that transcends the world, to change human nature. Even if we feel ourselves to be, chas v'sholom, outside the realm of redemption, as we've not yet left our internal exile state, by studying what the Torah says on the topic, we will be elevated to a state of redemption. We will then begin to live with these ideas and with the knowledge, recognition, and feeling that the Geulah is imminent. So comprehending the concepts ourselves It means studying, learning about Mashiach. Open up Jewish literature that talks about Mashiach. And when you have times, there are people who make a point that every single day, they learn a little bit about Mashiach. That itself changes your perspective. We're calling the final frontier. It's the human psyche itself, getting in touch with the true reality of what this world is all about. So, just a short recap. Through the teachings of Chabad Hasidism, a person is able to change his or her natural thought process and see the world for what it really is. The world is a kinder place. Oppressive and cruel regimes have fallen, and without crazy bloodshed. And this is happening around the world. People ignore it and say, "But there's this, issue in that country and that issue in the other country." But around the world, the political spirit is changing. The world is a kinder place. War and violence was an accepted way of life, and now you have no longer an accepted norm in today's society. That's Johannesburg. Long hours of backbreaking labor. I mean, was there anyone who was so valuable, their time and what they could accomplish was so valuable that they didn't have to work producing food themselves? Like, you don't have to dig in the garden because what you're accomplishing is worth so much that you can just trade that for food. I mean, that's novel. That's crazy.
Great.
Everybody has to work for food. That's the norm. You got to dig, you got to plow, you got to plant, you got to harvest, you got to gather. These are things that everybody has to do. No longer. No, as long as you sit behind a computer and work 2 out of the 14 hours that you're there, and then you get your minimum wage paycheck, and you could exchange that for plenty of nutrition to be well past any fear of being malnutrition. And you have any other higher skill than a minimum wage worker, and boom, you're it's much different than the way it used to be. So we spoke about what can we do about it. Okay, I don't see it. I don't know if this is something that you're telling me about. Well, when we learn about Mashiach, then our mind itself can get in touch with this higher and truer reality. The final section is handing over the baton, where in the spring of 1991, several months before the Rebbe suffered a stroke, and we've not been able to hear the Rebbe physically since, the Rebbe maybe sensed this time coming, this time period, and spoke a very impassioned talk about trying to get us to own that desire for the coming of Mashiach.
weil bei mir wird das mir achig dele, wie kommt es, als die Kleiner zusammen, 10 Nieden zusammen, und es gucken, wie auf die alle Unionen wird noch nicht herausgebracht, marschieren. Es hat dober, hat Prie, eine Muven, klar und klar, und danach will ich kommen zu gehen und luften als Wores, über noch eine Scheibe, mit noch ein Jena verbringen, wir müssen das noch einmal verschreiben, danach in seinem Medien, in das Halten und Gedenken, was verschrieben geworden, und dabei bleibt es, und Rachmon al-Islam ist doch recht, also Hein Banach soll noch nicht kommen, Moschiach, und es recht, also morgen soll noch nicht kommen, Moschiach, und übermorgen sollten nicht kommen, Moschiach. Und mit Freitag und mit Eisam soll schreien auf Masse. Und Hulu, einmal wohl geschrien mit Hanemes, und wohl gemeint mit Hanemes, ist eine sichere Sache, als Moschiach wohl schon lange gekommen, zusammen mit der Gula Amitis war schlimmer. Was ich kann noch tun, und du weiß ich nicht. Warum alles, was ich getan, bis ist der Hevel, weil Lorik, sie gar nicht der Reise von mir geblieben in Golus, und was noch mehr, ist geblieben mit der Gol in den Golus, pni merechet, wenn geht zu Avedes Hashem, und kommt über Kama Pomin. Mir wird eins gesagt, was ich kann noch tun, ich gebe das über jeder von euch, und tut alles, was kennt und setzt ein Robbling in Mashiach, Teke vom Yad Mamos in der Leben, die Unionentlake von Eris, die Teo, aber den Kehlen, die Tichun, und wie hier rotzen, als Sorkov Sorkov, sollen sich gefühlen 10 Nieden, was werden sich einnackschen und sagen, als sie muss nicht werden. Bei den Nebenschen ist das damals das Amt Scheyerefu, ושלח צולה ונינו לחתסנו ומחלטונו, ist eine sichere Sache, der Rebische wird darauf bringen, der Gula Amitis war schlimmer Decke von Yad Mamos und auf dem Meise, was sich noch tun in den, auf zu geben, machen jeden von euch auf ein Schlich, auf Zdoke, und wie hier rotzen, also ich habe und alles, was ich kenne, und ich kann nur haben, tut alles, was sie kennt, wie hier rotzen, also unser Gefühl zwischen euch, auf Kolponen 1, 2, 3, was soll nicht geben, was man soll tun, und was man soll tun. Weet we hoe ik wat me zal eens vinden, zal zijn teken voor mij uit. Mama, zo met de simcha we toelevo.
Lesson 4 about owning it, understanding it ourselves. And the Rebbe is basically saying, I've done everything I can to get you inspired, but I don't want you to just say, we want Mashiach now because I told you to say we want Mashiach now. I want you to personally get it and relate to it. And the Rambam in text 16 says, during the Messianic era, there will be neither famine nor war, neither envy nor competition. For all that is good will flow in abundance, and all delights will be freely available as dust. The occupation of the entire world will be solely to know God, as it says, the world will be filled with the knowledge of God as water covers the ocean. There'll be no famine or war. Famine and malnutrition used to be a major world issue. Now, there are still certain individuals who need food, but for the most part, it's a diminishing issue. Who dies of hunger in the United States?
Well, not here, of course.
Unless they're on like some sort of starvation, making a point. The average underprivileged person in today's society is better off than an affluent person in the 1800s. Would you rather be the smartest person in a stupid civilization, or the stupidest person in a very advanced, smart civilization? I mean, if you were the smartest person in a civilization, you'd probably be like the king, right? Well, the richest and smartest and wealthiest in the 1800s were worse off than the poorest and the least well off in today's age. Have tomatoes and cucumbers in your fridge, whether it's summer or winter, whether they're in season or not. Children can attend school. Now, in Florida, air conditioning is considered a necessity, not a luxury. And we see certain major diseases that plague the world are slowly disappearing. And that's one of the things that Bill Gates said. He's going to try to fight. He's going to get rid of, I'm going to get rid of cancer. I'm going to get rid of malaria. And these are attainable goals. We have certain hygiene that we didn't have before. So the world will be filled with the knowledge of God like the waters cover the ocean bed. What do we're inundated with messages and all these different platforms where we can pursue knowledge and learning and from all different avenues. It's all over the place. It covers our entire existence. flooding the world with knowledge. So if you look back through any time throughout history, is there a more opportune time for society to recognize the divine essence and inherent value in every part of creation? Civil rights, animal rights, environmentalism. Has there ever been a more opportune time for these types of things to be known? The beautiful world that Hashem created is beginning to show its infinite capabilities. If you brought somebody back from, I don't know, 150 years ago, you showed them the world today, you would say, you're crying for redemption, you're in a redeemed state. So, Keherifan, just look back to text 14 on page 174. This is the last discourse that the Rebbe handed out and distributed. Some of distributed dollars, some of distributed Hasidic teachings. He says, even when we enjoy conditions of plenty and abundance, both in material and spiritual matters, we are broken and crushed by our exiled state. And thus we arrive at the ultimate light. How do we reach the ultimate light? Not when we are coerced or told from the outside, you should want Mashiach. If somebody's telling you, you should want Mashiach, that's not you owning. This is the aspect of dear with that faith, making a home for Hashem within our own minds, within our own hearts, us getting it. On the one hand, we can get how the world is becoming more and more in tune with the divine values, the intrinsic divine light. On the other hand, because we are not oppressed, because we are not facing imminent oppression, when do we ever have our Jewish brothers throughout the entire world, almost every country, where they're free to live as a Jew openly? But because we are in that type of situation without that outward oppression, we're able to truly yearn for Mashiach. Somebody's pointing a gun at your head. So I want Mashiach now. We need Mashiach because you feel it's such a horrible situation that you're in that we want Mashiach now. But because we find ourselves in an unoppressed state, we are, in a way, the world itself is ready for Mashiach, but we're also ourselves able to truly want Mashiach from within without any sort of external coercion whatsoever. We'll end with text 17. It is true that this moment we are yet in the darkness of exile. Nevertheless, because exile is a dream, in one moment the situation can change from one pole to the other. That is to say, we can wake up from this dream of exile and immediately enter true reality, the redemption. So if exile was the true reality and we were dreaming for redemption, it might necessarily take a long time to go from this point to that point, from Aleph to Tav. But if it's just a revealing the Aleph within Gola, within exile, and you get to the Geula, because exile itself is a dream, it takes a moment, the blink of an eye, for a person to wake up from that state and realize that all of that was just a fleeting dream, and the true reality is the Geula, the Aleph, the divine unity within this world. So it will be apparent on the surface, and not just paradigm shift course time where you have to peel underneath the surface and then see its true divine reality. But edify in like the blink of an eye, it'll be the reality that we'll be able to perceive openly and easily. Amen. Thank you. Now.
Key points. Lesson 6. 1. Belief in a final redemption, an era of everlasting peace and goodness, and the anticipation of its arrival are fundamental to Jewish tradition and thought. 2. The redemption is an era when the beautiful and godly essence of everything, the Aleph, will be revealed to the naked eye. Redemption constitutes the ultimate reality as opposed to our current dreamlike state. 3. Considering that the central theme of the Rebbe's teachings is the importance of focusing on the pristine essence of every entity, the world, the human being, and so forth, it is no wonder that hastening the redemption, the day when that essence will be on full display, was the Rebbe's primary goal and lifelong vision. 4. We translate our yearning for the redemption into effective action by adding in deeds of goodness and kindness, and by studying the topic of redemption in the Torah. 5. Many signs point to the historic role of our generation and the fact that we are on the cusp of redemption. It is up to us to seize the moment and make it a reality. 6. The Rebbe insisted that the world itself is already prepared for redemption and urged us to open our eyes to this reality. The Rebbe identified modern-day phenomena such as the fall of the Iron Curtain, nuclear disarmament, and the development of advanced technologies as signs of redemption and indications of the world's readiness for the Messianic era.